From the CISO Series, it's Cybersecurity Headlines.
Amazon Ring privacy violations, Gigabyte firmware problems, and are we at risk of extinction at the hands of AI? These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on these stories from our guest, Howard Holton, CTO of GigaOm. Howard, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Our sponsor is Barricade Cyber Solutions. Recover, resolve, secure. And you can join us on YouTube Live by going to CISOseries.com, hitting the events drop down, and looking for the cybersecurity headlines we can review image. It's the third one down. Just click on it to join us. But we've got just 20 minutes, so we're going to jump right into it. Our first story is Amazon Ring Alexa accused of privacy violations by the FTC. The FTC is charged the Amazon departments responsible for Ring and Alexa for privacy offenses. Ring was accused of compromising its customers' privacy by making some security videos potentially available to employees and contractors, and Alexa was charged over data retention policies regarding the recording of children. So, Howard, obviously this one digs into people's fears that our devices are monitoring and tracking us at all times. What's your take on the fact that people may have to be a little bit more uncomfortable about these devices? Also be interested in knowing your spin on, these privacy regulations, how effective they are. Are they just a private, a profit center, or are they actually having a real impact on the industry?
So first off, this is my surprise face, so everyone's aware, right? Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting case, right? Effectively, they allege that all of the Ukraine Ring folks had full access to the video recordings from Ring devices, and that became a bit of a problem as those things go. And while they were deleting the video of children when requested, they weren't deleting the transcripts of the recordings, which is problematic. Which kind of speaks to a few different things, right? First, really terrible kind of privacy practices within those teams in Amazon, right? I'm not going to point at the whole of Amazon. Additionally, right, not just a lack of kind of the high level privacy, but also there's obviously no good GDPR qualifications. They're not paying any attention to who should have access, even if they as an organization shouldn't retain the data. But yeah, I think there's a huge problem. All of our devices listen to us all the time. Remember, if you don't pay for a product, or if the product is subsidized, it's likely subsidized by you, your data. You are the product. And so, yes, this is yet another case where, we are the product. And privacy regulations are, it's funny. I was thinking about it the other day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Piracy has kind of come to the front of stuff again. Some more sites got shut down. And the penalties for piracy are pretty severe against an individual, right? Far greater than the cost of a DVD rental if I share a movie, right? Or far greater than the cost of purchasing the media. Yet the same is not true when a corporation violates. When a corporation violates, if they make $1 billion and they're fined 5.4 million, why? That's not even a penalty. It's not even a slap on the wrist. It's not even a tax. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess my question with seeing your surprised face, or not surprised face, it makes me feel like you're not expecting the privacy practices to really be there. But for a company as big as Amazon, I mean, shouldn't we be surprised? Shouldn't we have a higher standard or expect a higher standard?
Oh yes, I think absolutely, right. I just don't until the penalties are there that far outweigh the cost. The cost is simply too great for them to do it. Right. When the penalty is $5.5 million, it's not worth it. When the penalty is $25 billion, the penalty is worth it.
Is that where quantitative risk assessment comes into play?
It really is.
Right.
That's the job, right?
Yep. Awesome. Let's move on to the next story. Gigabyte firmware update system insecure. Researchers at Eclipsium published a finding that 271 motherboards from Gigabyte, including a UEFI firmware update utility that runs on boot up. This system can go online and download updates without any user notification or authorization, without properly authenticating code, and often sending over an unencrypted HTTP connection. So we had a previous guest on the show, Johnson. She wrote in her newsletter this week, most enterprises have no way of knowing if they've got devices or software vulnerabilities injected somewhere along the way. And a major part of the problem is they don't even know what devices or software they have. Is this something you agree with? Do you think that applies here? And what's your overall take?
I mean, I think there's a reason that supply chain became the most talked about thing in 2016, 2017, 2018, right? Somewhere in that time frame, the pre-COVID days. Because ultimately, this is a huge challenge. This is a huge problem that we really need to get on top of. And it's not a matter of we will ever, we need to know everything that we have. We'll never know everything that we have. But what we really need to focus on is, can we reduce our blast radius so that this stuff doesn't affect us in the same way, so it's not so incredibly detrimental. I also thought it funny that the Gigabyte list is 291 motherboards, or 271 motherboards, which is effectively all of them. You could have just said the overwhelming majority. Fine.
Yeah, we love the details of the story, and your dog's in agreement. We should be doing better here. But what is it? I mean, what are the types of things that can be done to kind of affect change in this space?
Well, I think there's two things, right? I think the first thing is take a much more active role in understanding what the totality of your supply chain is, right? And figuring out what are all of the pieces that you've invited into the room. And then the second really is look at your architecture. And if any one of those things could be compromised, how bad will it be for you? Because it is likely that at some point they will. And not necessarily actively compromised, just they'll effectively be an open back door with a light on that says, please come in and, enjoy yourself.
Yeah, it goes back to the old adage of layers of security and understanding how we can limit the blast radius of some of these things that are outside of our control. And we don't like not having control as security practitioners and IT practitioners, as it turns out. All right.
Strangely enough.
Let's move on to our third story. Leading experts warn of a risk of extinction from AI. On Tuesday, AI experts warned that the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, pandemics, and nuclear war. These experts included OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and Jeffrey Hinton, also known as the godfather of AI, who, by the way, recently left Google so that he could talk more freely about his concerns about the risks of AI. So, Howard, this week NVIDIA reached $1 trillion market capitalization based on the promise of its, AI technology advances. It's clear how this is not going away and only going to speed ahead. What do you see this, and how do you think it really stacks up against things like the plague or nuclear weapons?
Okay, so the plague's a little bit of a difficult one, but nuclear weapons, there's still a human on the button, at least for now, and I don't see that changing in the future. The plague is interesting because there's a whole lot of biological conditions that keep the plague from being an extinction level event, as it were. The randomness of asteroids, right? If we're going to talk extinction level events, right? And the predictability, like we can see them coming. The likelihood that it's going to surprise us is strange. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that AI is the nightmare that everybody's kind of laying it out to be. Again, is it something we need to ignore? No, we absolutely should not. The scariest thing that I ever saw was one of Google's experiments 5-ish years ago. They brought up this AI on multiple machines, and over the weekend, it started to develop its own language. Right, and then the maintenance team, the management team, the development team could no longer understand what it was doing, what it was saying, or what it was attempting to do, and emergency shut it down over the weekend. Right,
that is slightly concerning, I would say.
A little bit. Right. At the same time, I'm always concerned when the "we've got ours" starts talking about regulations. Right. So when Sam stands up and says, hey, we need AI regulations, dude, you hit 100 million users. It's easy for you to now say, we need fewer competitors in the space that I'm currently dominating. right? And that's always kind of the flip side of that coin. Yes, I agree. We need good, smart AI and AI ethical regulation. We need it in a way that does it that does the least amount of damage to innovation, though, because that's a really important thing. And ultimately, we can't just have enormous tech companies.
Hmm.
We need new entrants to constantly be able to compete in as level a playing field as possible. And if all we do is add um, regulation after we have the big players that don't equally infringe upon the big players, which is impossible because they're extremely well funded at that point, then all we're really doing is limiting competition. And that's I have a bigger concern today around limiting competition than I do that AI is going to take over the world and kill us.
Well, thanks for taking down the anxiety level a bit because the headline did appear quite ominous. So it's an interesting take. Thanks for that. Um, let's go on to our next story. Attackers use encrypted messages in Microsoft 365 targeted phishing attacks. Researchers at TrustWave have observed threat actors using encrypted RPMSG messages sent via compromised M365 accounts in a phishing campaign aimed at stealing Microsoft creds. RPMSG, love saying that. Files are supposed to be more secure because they use encrypted attachments to deliver email messages. But this phishing attack does the same old thing, leading people to a spoofed website where it tricks them into basically giving up their creds. So love always coming back to the human element and social engineering. And I just love asking, how do we get to the heart of snuffing these out? Obviously, creds are the golden ticket for attackers, and if humans are giving it up, what can we do? Tell me there's hope.
Well, that's where things like ZTNA start to matter, right? What am I doing to analyze the individual user's usage pattern, right? It's actually not a bad use for machine learning and AI. Is can I create an incredibly detailed profile for an individual user, an individual application, an individual form of communication,
Hmm.
and then change my alerting and the severity of said alerting based on the 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 percentage of deviation within the level of alert that should be assigned, right? Um, it's kind of problematic because we really need to avoid alert to avoid alert fatigue. Alert fatigue is a huge problem, right? At the same time, um, we don't really have the tools necessary to solve this problem. But multi-factor authentication should absolutely be used today. Passwordless is something we should really be considering. And ultimately, if somebody thought you got better security because they had secure message in the name, that's not what it does. It secures the content of the message. It does not provide better controls over cyber security. And I think that's a really important distinction. If people thought that it was secure because it was a secure
Yep.
message, and thus a trusted communication. No, 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 no. It simply secures from interception the payload of the message.
Yeah, it's kind of like the lock symbol going away, right, for HTTPS, because I mean, phishing sites are using HTTPS, so we don't want to give the appearance that it's secure. But one observation in your response, you were naming tools as the mitigants for the human part of this, right? And have you given up on, hey, humans are going to solve this on their own or with training,
We're
or that's part of it?
No, we're never going to solve it on our own, right? I mean, we constantly see this when we do when we do our annual cybersecurity training. Every organization I've ever been with, every peer I've ever had, we always see an uptick in reports the first 2 weeks after the mandatory cybersecurity training, right? Like if you just look at it, you can see, oh, hey, we got more phishing attacks, and then the reports go down. The phishing hasn't actually stopped. It's only front of mind for the 2 weeks a year right after we do the cybersecurity training. And so I don't think we should stop that. At the same time, um, let's be honest about the effectiveness of the things that we do.
Yep.
And the only way to keep up with attackers is with as much training as you can expect employees to have, as much care and concern as you can expect employees to have, and then reducing their ability to do damage, even if they turn malicious.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of people who would agree with you on that approach, but I think relying solely on the human part to resolve itself seems to be a little bit of a lost cause since it's been happening for quite a long time.
Yeah, never going to happen. I mean, you can't rely on people to lock their cars when they go Christmas shopping at the mall.
Yeah, that is true. All right. Before we move on, let's spend a minute with our sponsor, Barricade Cyber Solutions. Have you fallen victim to a ransomware attack? Well, don't worry. Barricade Cyber Solutions has helped thousands of customers in situations just like yours. Their proprietary ransomware recovery services are designed to quickly get your business back on track. Their team of experts will identify the source of the attack and provide comprehensive solutions to prevent it from happening again. You can count on them for the security of your data and systems. Visit barricadecyber.com. All right, let's move on to our next story. Lender OneMain fined $4.25 million for cybersecurity lapses. OneMain Financial Group, which specializes in using loans to people with non-prime credit histories, will pay $4.25 million penalty in New York State for cybersecurity lapses found during government investigation. These included the presence of shared accounts, default passwords, and underwhelming due diligence on software life cycles and third-party vendor management. I'm noticing your lack of shocked face, but I'm going to let you answer for yourself. Do you think that this reflects like the same type of shortcomings as the RPMSG story in any way? How do organizations, especially those regulated industries like finance, still manage to have these types of glaring security issues?
Because it costs them nothing to have these security issues. Like that is 0.1% of their global turnover for 2020.
So
Right?
stiffer penalties then? Is that
At
the
a minimum,
answer?
at an absolute
Yeah.
minimum, criminal charges for those who make those decisions. Right? They're effectively causing damage to their users. Right? Again, if an individual faces a $10,000 penalty for sharing a copy of Game of Thrones season 1 episode 1, or the latest, I don't know, Taylor Swift CD, why do the CEOs of these organizations who make millions of dollars a year suffer no individual penalties whatsoever? Right? Like at some point we have to, as just a society, wake up and go, we cannot continue to allow people to make these decisions with our lives, it is us, right, and get away with effectively nothing. If you'd have fined the CEO 4.25 million, they probably would have done something. You find an organization 0.1% of its global turnover, it does nothing, which is why GDPR sets it at 4%.
Do you think companies, and obviously not speaking for your own here, but do you think companies are generally trying to do the right thing, and all we're hearing is the news, right? So we're hearing the obviously the ones that may have these glaring issues, but do you think that's getting better, staying the same? Do you have a sense
No,
for
it's getting
where
better.
it's going? Yeah.
No, I will say for the most part, right? I think the swing is it's getting better, and I think companies genuinely want to be good stewards for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
I spent a decade in e-discovery, and so I also got to see kind of the worst of people because they were all being sued by someone who felt they were wrong, right? So I have a little bit of a kind of cynical outer face, but I think for the most part, we especially as professionals want to do better. But the number of times I've been told, I'm sorry, that's just too expensive, or it's too difficult to change the workflow, or I don't want to impact the users. Like it's those ones that I really struggle with. Not that it's too expensive, right, in dollars, but I don't want to impact my users. It's too hard for my users to click that extra box. It's too hard for my users to do the things to turn the control off.
Yeah,
That's
we used to be. I've been doing this for 20 years. We used to be hard on users all the time. Now we've maybe swung the pendulum swung too far in the other direction, perhaps.
Yeah, well, and I don't. I think for the most part, I don't actually hear it from the users for long. You hear it for the first 2 weeks, kind of the
Mhm.
same thing with the training. But I hear it a lot from managers, and I think part of it goes back to we don't actually train people in leadership roles to actually be leaders.
Yep.
And if they explained why this was important, why this mattered, and why it mattered, especially to our clients, I think our users would get on board a whole lot faster and a whole lot easier.
Awesome. Great take there. Let's move on to the next story. Sixth story of the day: the dangers of Salesforce ghost sites. Researchers at Varonis sounded an alarm on ghost sites that can occur when an organization sets up a Salesforce community service and then later migrates from Salesforce without deleting what they've built there. So I'm really sensing a recurring trend of sorts here. It's easy for people to forget, Howard, how to remove unused accounts. Same goes for tech and wiping computers and basically what I would refer to as hygiene. So what's your take on this one?
Well, I think there's kind of two layers. I think first, in general, our tech hygiene is poor, and there is kind of a recurring theme, right? I mean, how many times has someone exposed data that they recovered from a hard drive that they picked up from a salvage company or from a scrapyard or whatever, right?
Yep.
I think the second thing kind of talks a little bit about kind of API security, right? There's a similar theme there, where when companies were asked before an audit how many APIs they had exposed, they were off by 80% to 800%. Right? They were generally far lower.
Yep.
And there's no way, I don't think anybody could name all the APIs they have in their organization, nor all the individual applications they actually have in their organization, right? And so we do need to have better hygiene. We do need to pay more attention, and at the same time, we need to pay people to do it. I don't pay developers to have good hygiene. I pay them to be fast.
I agree. I mean, I think that's a big part of the problem is these things are not easy to do, and they take a real commitment in terms of resourcing to do them, and we tend to focus on the shiny objects or business pressures. But if you have the fundamentals right, shouldn't it allow you to move faster?
Agreed.
All right. Well, let's move on to our last story of the day. This one is along the AI stream here. So, lawyer cited 6 fake cases made up by ChatGPT. Lawyer Stephen Schwartz of the firm Levidow has admitted to using ChatGPT to help write court filings that cited 6 non-existent cases. After having been caught, Schwartz did express regret for using AI to supplement his research. I think he also vowed to actually fact check it going forward, so that will be nice. So obviously these headlines aren't going away, but this one stood out to me as interesting just based on its ramifications. I also think that the judge would like to levy fines here, but there's no precedence literally for this case. So interested in your take on all of it and the implications.
I mean, again, my surprise face, right? People are going to do the bare minimum they need to, and ChatGPT has actually been shown to be a pretty good robo lawyer, right? That's an AI technology that's been around for a while. However, if I design a system and I tell the system everything give it every piece of data I'm aware of in the world, right? Let it have unfettered access to the internet and learn. Make connections between terms, make connections between ideas, learn everything everyone's ever said about every topic. You know what I don't have the ability to give it to do? I don't have the ability to let it say, I don't know. I don't have that ability. And so that also means I don't have any ability to make it trustworthy.
Yeah. The other interesting thing there is the lawyer there, he showed transcripts from some of the queries showing how he asked ChatGPT whether those were legitimate cases, and of course it came back and said yes, these are, and gave the sources from which it drew. So seems like maybe not the best, maybe a conflict of interest there. I'll say.
Well, I mean, it's also like ChatGPT could very well say yes and give you a reference, and the reference could come from someone's novel, someone's fan fiction, a film, right? Like
Yep.
it's still knowledge. It's not aware of the quality of the knowledge necessarily. And in that particular case, it really came back on the attorney or if they had a paralegal that actually prepared it, paralegal to not have they obviously, oh, I asked it for references, it gave me references. Sure. But if I ask you for references, you give me references and I don't check your references, it's still on me.
Yeah, I think it's all about accountability when it's coming to this new technology. It seems to be a recurring theme. So, well, thanks for the hot take there. And we've made it to the end of the 20 minutes. It basically flew by, at least from my perspective, hopefully yours too. And thanks, Howard, for being with us. Where can people find you on the interwebs if they are so inclined to do so?
So the one I'm on the most often is LinkedIn. So you can find me on the LinkedIn at in/Howard Holton. I'm on there at least a couple times a day, so drop me a note. And then I think the constant question is, are you hiring? Well, GigaOm is a research organization. We only use engineers, practitioners as our analysts, our researchers. And so if you're an engineer, a practitioner in security or networking or whatever, and you'd like to see about maybe making a little bit of extra income, it's all contract work. Reach out to me again on LinkedIn and hit me up.
Awesome. Thanks for the plug there. And you beat me to the punch. And I'd like to thank you again to our guest, Howard Holton, CTO of GigaOm. Thank you also to our sponsor, Barricade Cyber Solutions. Recover, resolve, secure. Also, thank you to our audience for your comments. I did see them on the screen. We were a little bit ahead, but we keep them coming and keep joining us. We do appreciate your engagement. We don't get a chance to put them all up on screen, but we'll read them and enjoy them later. Remember to join us next Friday for Super Cyber Friday, when our topic will be hacking data loss, an hour of critical thinking about improving the marriage between data security and cybersecurity. We'll be back next week with another episode of Week in Review show as well. In the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix through cybersecurity headlines every day in just about 6 minutes. So this is Sean Kelly signing off for Howard Holton. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.